The spaceport hung in the orbit of Valora Prime like a jewel suspended in darkness. Its metallic spires glinted against the distant sun, casting long shadows across the vast docking bays. Within one of those bays, a ship unlike any other in human history sat waiting, gleaming under the cold lights of the station. The vessel was sleek, almost organic in shape, with smooth curves and panels that seemed to shimmer slightly as if breathing. It was the pride of humanity's engineering, a testament to what humans could accomplish when skill, imagination, and determination met necessity. Inside the bay, a team of engineers moved with precise efficiency, their faces reflecting a mix of exhaustion, pride, and nervous anticipation. Dr. Mara Levin, the team leader, watched them with a steady gaze. Her dark hair was tied back tightly, and her eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing. The room smelled faintly of metal polish, circuitry, and the clean, recycled air of the station. Every few steps, she checked her tablet, scrolling through schematics, performance logs, and the last-minute diagnostics that would decide if the ship was ready for its first test flight. "Engineers, we have exactly 20 minutes before the final system check window closes," she said, her voice calm but firm. A young engineer named Eli, barely out of training, adjusted a panel on the ship's side, sweat beading on his forehead. "We're almost there, Dr. Levin," he said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. He had spent months perfecting the ship's propulsion systems, and now, standing in front of it, he felt a strange combination of pride and fear. Pride, because he had helped create something that could venture further than any human-made craft before. Fear, because deep down, he knew that no matter how much they had prepared, the unknown could always surprise them. Mara moved toward the ship, her boots echoing softly against the metal floor. She reached the command console and began her final inspection, running her hands over the controls, the screens lighting up with data streams. "Life support is stable. Propulsion is online. Navigation systems are responsive," she muttered. The ship was supposed to handle everything, from extreme gravity distortions to radiation storms. But Mara knew that even the best technology was only as good as the humans who guided it. Outside the bay, the station's observation decks were crowded with spectators. Scientists, investors, and journalists waited anxiously, their attention fixed on the vessel. The ship was humanity's boldest attempt at exploring uncharted regions of space, and every eye in the station reflected hope, curiosity, and perhaps a touch of fear. Some whispered about the mysteries of the Silent Rift, a region where past probes had disappeared without a trace. Others focused on the promise of new discoveries, the chance to push human knowledge further than ever before. Eli's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted a sensor array. "Dr. Levin," he said, hesitating, "the readings on the gravity dampeners, they're fluctuating more than expected." Mara glanced at the display. A subtle irregularity pulsed across the screen, almost imperceptible, but enough to catch her attention. She frowned. "Minor calibration error," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'll correct it in the final check. Focus on your tasks. Remember, we've anticipated anomalies. That's what testing is for." Yet even as she spoke, a small part of her mind lingered on the unexplained readings. This was the first time she felt the weight of the unknown pressing against her chest. The crew began the boarding process. The ship's doors hissed as they sealed shut, enclosing the team in a compact but efficient cabin. Panels glowed softly, casting a blue hue over the interior. Each engineer found their station, taking in the delicate balance of controls, screens, and instruments that surrounded them. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal polish, a reminder of the months of work that had gone into this moment. Mara took the captain's seat, her fingers hovering above the controls. Around her, the engineers adjusted their equipment, double-checking connections, reviewing data, and silently preparing themselves for what lay ahead. Initiating pre-launch sequence, Mara announced. The ship hummed to life. Lights flickered, screens displayed real-time diagnostics, and the gentle vibration of the engines coursed through the floor. The team felt it deep in their bones, the power they had created, controlled, and were about to test. Eli swallowed hard, gripping the edge of his console. "It feels alive," he whispered. One of the veteran engineers, Joran, chuckled softly. "It is alive, in a way," he said. "Not like you and me, but it will respond to us, or challenge us if we fail." Mara nodded without speaking. She had felt it too. The ship, in its own way, seemed aware. Not conscious, not in the human sense, but capable of reacting, testing, and adapting. That was part of its brilliance, and part of its danger. Humanity had built a vessel that could venture into the silent rift, where physics bent strangely and signals from the past had vanished. But no machine, no matter how advanced, could completely predict the unknown. That was where humans came in. Their intuition, creativity, and courage were the ship's true engines. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The bay seemed to shrink around them, the hum of the ship growing louder, vibrating through the walls. The engineers exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and tension. Every heartbeat was amplified, every breath held in anticipation. They had rehearsed this moment countless times, but no simulation could replicate the real thing. 7, 6, 5. Mara felt her pulse quicken. This was the culmination of years of work, of nights spent debugging systems, of sacrifices and relentless focus. 4, 3, 2, 1. The engines roared to life, a deep, resonant sound that shook the very structure of the station. The ship lifted slowly, hovering above the docking bay before accelerating outward. Lights streaked past as it pierced the station's protective barriers, moving toward the darkness of open space. The engineers pressed themselves against their seats, feeling both awe and fear. The ship's AI spoke softly, a voice calm and measured. "All systems nominal. Ready for transit." Mara exhaled, a small smile forming despite the tension. They were in the unknown now, and there was no turning back. The first few minutes of flight were uneventful, almost serene. The stars stretched into long streaks as the ship accelerated, leaving the familiar orbit behind. But then, subtle disturbances began to appear. A flicker of light along a control panel, a momentary shift in gravity simulation, the quiet hum of an engine that hesitated for a heartbeat before stabilizing. The anomalies were minor, nothing catastrophic, but enough to unsettle the engineers. Eli's hands moved quickly, recalibrating the sensors, adjusting the dampeners. He felt his fear clawing at him, a reminder that no matter how skilled he was, space demanded respect. "Everyone stay focused," Mara said, her voice calm but firm. "Minor fluctuations are expected. The ship is responding as it should. Trust your training." Yet as she spoke, she too felt a subtle unease. The ship had been built to handle extreme conditions, but it was also testing them in ways they could not fully understand. There was a strange intelligence in its design, a responsiveness that went beyond simple programming. It was learning, adapting, and perhaps even anticipating their actions. Hours passed. The engineers worked tirelessly, monitoring systems, adjusting controls, and responding to minor malfunctions. Despite the tension, there was a sense of exhilaration. They were pioneers, venturing farther than any human had ever gone. Each small success, the stabilization of a system, the correction of an anomaly, felt like a triumph over the vast, indifferent universe. Yet with each success came the reminder that failure was always possible, that the line between achievement and disaster was thin and fragile. During a brief pause, Mara allowed herself to observe her team. Joran, the veteran engineer, moved with calm precision, his hands steady and sure. Eli, though younger and less experienced, showed remarkable intuition, anticipating problems before they fully manifested. Around them, the hum of the ship was constant, almost alive, as if it were observing them, testing not just their skill, but their resolve. Mara realized that this journey was as much about human courage as it was about technology. The ship was a mirror, reflecting their fears, strengths, and determination. As the ship approached the outer edge of the mapped space, the darkness of the void deepened. Stars seemed to waver, distant and cold. The AI's voice remained calm, guiding them through micro-adjustments and recalibrations. Mara felt a strange comfort in its presence, a reminder that while the unknown was vast and unpredictable, they were not alone. Humanity had built companions, tools, and vessels capable of extending their reach, but it was their ingenuity, courage, and trust in one another that truly mattered. By the time the first day of flight ended, the engineers had already faced challenges they had not anticipated. Yet they were still together, still functional, still in awe of the ship they had created. Mara allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The journey had just begun, but already it had tested their fears, stretched their skills, and reminded them of the delicate balance between pride and humility. Humanity's reach was far greater than before, but the universe remained a vast, untamed expanse, full of mystery and challenge. As the ship glided silently through the black, Mara closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of the countless hours of work, the sacrifices, the doubts, and the triumphs that had brought them here. She felt a surge of determination. Whatever the universe held beyond the next star, she knew that human courage, creativity, and resilience would guide them. The ship had been tested, and now, so had they. And in that testing, they had found not weakness, but strength. The night stretched on, stars glimmering like distant promises. The engineers remained vigilant, yet a quiet sense of wonder settled over them. They were human, small in the face of infinite space, yet capable of incredible things. Their fears had been challenged, their skills pushed to the limit, but they were alive, ready and determined. The ship, magnificent and almost alive itself, carried them forward into the unknown, where countless mysteries awaited. And as they ventured further, one truth became clear. In the endless expanse of space, human courage and ingenuity were the brightest lights of all. The first hours of deep space flight had passed with careful precision, yet the engineers could feel the quiet tension building as the ship moved farther from familiar stars. The edges of mapped space blurred into blackness, and even the smallest pinprick of light from a distant sun felt impossibly far away. Each engineer stared at their console, their faces reflecting the faint glow of the instruments, trying to convince themselves that the strange vibrations and slight irregularities in the ship were normal. Mara knew they were not. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a partner, and perhaps even a judge, testing every decision, every action, and every hesitation. Eli was the first to speak. "Dr. Levin, the propulsion matrix is fluctuating again. Minor, but unusual." His voice carried a hint of worry, which he tried hard to suppress. Mara glanced at the holographic readouts. The fluctuation was subtle, but it was real. She leaned forward, tracing a pattern on the display with her finger. "Not catastrophic," she said evenly, "but something we must monitor closely. Adjust the flux regulators by 0.4. Let's see if that stabilizes it." Joran, seated nearby, shook his head slightly. "I've seen machines act strange under stress, but this feels different, almost like it's responding to us in real time." Mara raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She had felt it too. The way the ship seemed to anticipate their moves, subtly shifting systems, almost nudging them toward certain decisions. It was unsettling, but it was also a reminder that human intuition was being tested as much as technical skill. Hours passed. The engineers worked with precision, responding to minor alarms, stabilizing systems, and recalibrating sensors. Each problem solved seemed to bring a new one into focus. The navigation array began to lag, a temperature regulator oscillated erratically, and the energy redistribution matrix hummed in a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. Yet despite these challenges, the engineers adapted quickly. This was the moment their training had prepared them for, the moment when human ingenuity had to rise above fear. The ship's AI, which had been quiet for much of the flight, began to offer suggestions. Vector adjustment recommended. Minor gravitational anomaly detected ahead. Mara considered the information, then nodded. Proceed with suggested vector adjustment. Keep propulsion within safe parameters. The AI's calm voice was almost comforting. Yet the team could not shake the sense that the vessel itself was alive in a way they had not fully understood. It responded to anomalies, corrected problems in advance, and seemed to observe their reactions as much as they observed its readings. Late into the second day, the engineers noticed something that made their hearts skip a beat. A field of energy lay ahead, unseen in prior scans, a swirling expanse that seemed to distort the light around it. The instruments wavered, showing impossible readings, gravitational spikes, radiation surges, and an array of anomalies that no simulation had predicted. Mara's hands tightened on the controls. "Everyone remain calm," she said, her voice steady even as her pulse raced. "This is why we designed the ship for extreme conditions. Prepare all systems for adaptive response." The engineers moved with practiced urgency, adjusting shields, calibrating dampeners, and running emergency protocols in real time. Eli's hands shook slightly as he entered the data sequences, his young face pale under the glow of the screens. Joran moved with methodical precision, double-checking every calculation, while Mara coordinated the team, her mind racing with contingencies. The anomaly seemed to shift and pulse as they approached, a swirling mass of light and energy that defied comprehension. For a moment, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Then, the first real challenge hit. A sudden surge of energy coursed through the ship, sending instruments flickering and alarms blaring. The floor vibrated as if the vessel itself shivered under pressure. "Stabilizers failing!" Eli shouted, pressing multiple keys at once. Mara's fingers flew over the controls, rerouting energy, engaging emergency dampeners, and stabilizing propulsion. The ship groaned in response, its systems adapting in a strange, almost instinctive manner. It was a dance between human skill and artificial intelligence, each movement precise, each decision critical. Minutes stretched into hours as they navigated the anomaly. The ship's AI began offering more detailed instructions, predicting energy surges and advising on structural adjustments. Mara noticed something remarkable. The AI seemed to respond not only to the environment, but also to their reactions. When fear or hesitation crept into their actions, the ship compensated, nudging them toward the correct solutions. It was testing them, not in a hostile way, but as if measuring their courage, their focus, and their ability to adapt under pressure. By the time they cleared the anomaly, the engineers were exhausted but exhilarated. The ship's systems had sustained minor damage, but the AI's adaptive responses had prevented catastrophe. Eli sank into his seat, wiping sweat from his forehead. I can't believe we made it," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and awe. Joran smiled faintly, his usual calm demeanor returning. "We didn't just make it. We learned, and that's what matters. The ship adapts, but we guide it. That's humanity's strength." Mara allowed herself a brief moment of pride. She had led her team through the first real trial, and they had not only survived but succeeded. Yet she knew that this was only the beginning. The ship had tested them and they had responded, but the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges that no human or machine could fully anticipate. Their courage, ingenuity, and teamwork would be tested again, and they had to be ready. The following day brought another challenge. Sensors detected a field of micrometeoroids moving at incredible speeds, invisible to the naked eye but capable of damaging the ship's hull. The engineers scrambled to adjust shields and navigate through the dense, dangerous region. The ship groaned under the pressure of rapid maneuvers, yet each adjustment was precise, each calculation critical. The team moved as one, their actions coordinated, almost instinctual, as if the months of training had fused them with the vessel itself. As they emerged from the micrometeoroid field, the engineers paused to catch their breath. The ship had sustained minor damage, but nothing irreparable. Mara looked at her team, seeing exhaustion etched on their faces, but also a gleam of exhilaration in their eyes. They had faced the unknown and survived. They had tested their skills, their patience, and their courage, and the ship had tested them in return. Eli, still catching his breath, looked out through the viewport at the vastness of space. "It's beautiful," he whispered. The stars stretched infinitely, distant suns casting light on planets they had yet to explore. "And terrifying," he added, a small smile forming despite his fatigue. Mara nodded. Beauty and danger existed side by side in the universe, she thought. Humanity had learned to navigate both, using courage, creativity, and resilience as their guides. Even as they rested, the subtle unease returned. The ship's AI had been unusually active, adjusting systems in ways they had not predicted. It was almost as if the vessel had learned from their responses, adapting not only to the environment, but also to their actions. Mara felt a thrill of understanding. This was why they had been chosen for this mission. Human intuition, creativity, and courage were essential for survival, especially when technology itself was pushing them to their limits. Hours later, as the team conducted routine checks, a new anomaly appeared. It was smaller than the previous ones. A faint distortion in space-time that seemed to shimmer like a mirage. The instruments struggled to record accurate data, showing inconsistent readings. Mara leaned over the console, studying the displays. "This is new," she murmured. Eli's eyes widened. "Should we approach it?" he asked cautiously. Joran shook his head slowly. "We observe first. We react second. Patience is as important as skill out here." The engineers spent the next several hours carefully monitoring the anomaly, running simulations in real time, and adjusting the ship's systems. The AI provided predictions and guidance, but it was human judgment that ultimately determined each course of action. The team worked in near-perfect harmony, a testament to months of preparation, training, and shared determination. They were humans facing the unknown, and every decision mattered. By the end of the day, the anomaly had faded, leaving no lasting trace but a series of recorded data points. The engineers reviewed their work, analyzing logs and making adjustments to prevent similar surprises. Mara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. They had faced something unknown, something unpredictable, and they had succeeded. The ship had tested their fears, and they had responded with skill, courage, and ingenuity. As night settled over the vast darkness of space, the engineers allowed themselves brief moments of rest. They knew that challenges would continue, that the unknown would always press against them, and that the ship would continue to test their limits. But for now, they were alive, triumphant, and ready for whatever lay ahead. Mara looked at her team and felt a surge of pride. Humanity had built a vessel capable of facing the universe's dangers, but it was human spirit, resilience, and courage that truly guided them. And somewhere deep within the ship, systems adjusted, sensors calibrated, and AI routines adapted. The vessel had learned from its human partners, testing them, pushing them, and preparing them for the vast unknown. Together, humans and machine moved forward into the endless expanse, a partnership of courage and ingenuity, ready to face whatever the universe dared to throw at them. The ship glided silently through the darkness, leaving behind the familiar stars of mapped space. Ahead lay the silent rift, a vast region that had swallowed probes, drones, and unmanned ships without a trace. No one truly understood the phenomena within it: gravitational distortions, radiation storms, and strange energy fields that seemed to bend time itself. Scientists on Valora Prime had speculated endlessly, but the rift had remained unconquered. Now, the responsibility rested on the shoulders of Mara Levin and her team. They were humanity's first explorers in a place where the unknown had always prevailed. As the ship approached the rift, the instruments began to behave strangely. Readings fluctuated wildly. Sensors picked up distortions in the very fabric of space around them. The engineers exchanged tense glances, each one aware that this was more than a technical challenge. The silent rift did not allow mistakes. Mara's hands rested lightly on the controls, her mind racing through contingencies. She knew that every decision they made would test their skill, their courage, and their ability to trust one another. Eli, sitting at the propulsion console, adjusted the flux regulators for the 5th time in as many minutes. "Dr. Levin, the gravitational waves are stronger than anything in our simulations. The ship's hull is holding, but just barely." He swallowed hard, fighting the rising panic he could feel in his chest. Mara's voice was calm, steadying him. "We designed this ship for extremes. Trust the systems, and trust yourselves. Focus on the calculations, not the fear." Joran, the veteran engineer, studied the navigation display carefully. His fingers hovered over the emergency override. "We're entering a region where sensors might not be reliable. We'll have to rely on intuition and experience as much as technology." He looked at Mara. "This is where humans matter more than machines. Remember that." She nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. The ship could withstand the physical dangers, but it was human courage that would see them through the unpredictable. The rift greeted them with a subtle tremor, the kind that made the air in the cabin feel heavier, denser, as if gravity itself had thickened. Instruments flickered. The stars outside twisted, bending into strange arcs, reflecting the distortions in space. The engineers worked in near silence, speaking only when necessary, coordinating their actions with precision. The ship hummed beneath them, alive and reactive, adjusting systems with a fluidity that felt almost instinctive. It was clear now that the vessel was not only a machine, but also a partner in this trial, responding to their fears as much as their skill. Hours passed, each moment feeling like an eternity. Waves of energy passed through the rift, striking the ship with sudden intensity. Shields flared, dampeners shuddered, and the AI's calm voice guided them through each anomaly. "Vector adjustment recommended. Energy surge detected. Maintain hull integrity protocols." Mara followed its instructions carefully, aware that even a slight hesitation could cause cascading failures. Each pulse of energy tested the engineer's coordination, patience, and focus. The ship challenged them not just physically but psychologically, probing their fears and forcing them to remain calm under pressure. Eli's hands shook as he worked to stabilize the power conduits. It's too much," he muttered, almost to himself. The room seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the ship, the vibrations traveling through the floor and into their bones. Joran placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Focus, Eli. Remember why you're here. Fear will slow you down. Skill will carry you through." Eli nodded, taking a deep breath and letting the rhythm of the ship guide his actions. They were humans navigating the impossible, relying on intellect, intuition, and courage to survive. A sudden alarm pierced the cabin, a sharp, insistent tone that made every engineer jolt in their seat. The main hull had detected a localized stress fracture in the ship's structure, caused by a gravitational spike from the rift. Mara's mind raced. Divert all auxiliary power to structural stabilization. Reroute energy from propulsion to reinforce the hull. Her voice was calm but commanding, each instruction delivered with precision. The engineers moved in perfect synchrony, adjusting panels, recalibrating systems, and monitoring stress levels. For several tense minutes, the ship groaned under the strain, the vibrations echoing through the cabin. Every panel, every display, every gauge flickered with readings that seemed almost impossible. Then, slowly, the hull stabilized. The engineers exhaled in relief, but there was no time to celebrate. The rift had already begun to shift again, sending another wave of distortion toward them. Each success brought them closer to mastery, but the challenges were relentless. As they navigated deeper, the anomalies became stranger. Light bent around invisible masses, creating illusions of stars and ships where none existed. Instruments recorded fluctuations in time perception, small differences that made the engineers question their own senses. Mara felt a subtle vertigo, a twisting sensation that made her pulse quicken. She focused on the data, blocking out the eerie visuals outside the viewport. The rift was testing not just their skills, but their minds. It was a silent opponent, invisible yet palpable, challenging their perception, patience, and courage. Hours stretched into an endless trial. The team worked tirelessly, taking only short breaks to rest and monitor life support. They relied on each other, sharing observations, cross-checking calculations, and offering quiet reassurances. Mara noticed a remarkable thing. The ship's AI adjusted more aggressively as the engineers demonstrated calm, precision, and confidence. It was as if the vessel learned from them, responding more predictably when they remained steady under pressure. Conversely, moments of hesitation triggered more challenges, as though the ship mirrored their doubts back at them. Eli, exhausted and tense, wiped sweat from his brow. "It's like it's testing us," he said quietly, almost in awe. Mara nodded. "It is, not to harm us, but to see how we respond. This is the ultimate trial of human ingenuity. We've built the ship to survive the impossible, but we have to survive ourselves first." Joran smiled faintly. "And that's what makes us special. Machines can follow rules, but humans can adapt, improvise, and endure." As the team reached the midpoint of the rift, a particularly violent surge struck. Gravity fluctuated wildly, throwing instruments off balance and making the cabin feel like a storm-tossed vessel. Warning lights flashed, alarms screamed, and the ship groaned with strain. Mara gritted her teeth, guiding the vessel with precise adjustments. "All hands, stabilize your stations, reinforce hull integrity. We're riding this one out together." Every engineer focused intensely, performing calculations, rerouting energy, and adjusting dampeners. The ship responded, stabilizing under the combined effort of human skill and adaptive AI. In the aftermath, a strange calm settled over the cabin. The engineers sat quietly, catching their breath, hearts racing, but a sense of accomplishment filled the space. They had faced the impossible and survived. The silent rift had tested their skills, courage, and teamwork, and they had risen to the challenge. Mara looked at her team, pride and relief mingling in her expression. They had survived the first major trial, but she knew the rift had more to teach them. Its challenges were far from over, and the lessons it demanded were still unfolding. The following day, the anomalies shifted again. A wave of electromagnetic interference disrupted communications, cutting off all contact with Valora Prime. The engineers felt a subtle fear creep in, the realization that they were truly alone, deep within a region of space where no help could reach them. Mara's voice broke the silence. "We are self-reliant. Trust your skills, trust each other, and trust the ship. We are prepared for this." The team nodded, their resolve hardening. Fear was present, but it was tempered by experience and confidence. They were humans facing the unknown, and they would rise to meet it. As they navigated further, the rift seemed to push back in unexpected ways. Energy currents shifted without warning, gravitational distortions created false paths, and the ship's instruments displayed readings that defied conventional logic. Mara felt a moment of vertigo, her hands gripping the controls tightly. "Steady," she whispered. "One adjustment at a time. Observe, analyze, and respond." The engineers followed her lead, working methodically, allowing skill and intuition to guide them through each anomaly. By the third day, exhaustion weighed heavily on the team. Yet their performance had never been stronger. Each challenge had refined their coordination, sharpened their instincts, and strengthened their confidence. Mara watched as Eli adjusted a sensor array with careful precision. Joran monitored the hull's stress points, and other engineers coordinated energy distribution. They were humans at their best, using intellect, creativity, and courage to navigate the unimaginable. Then, just as they began to believe they had mastered the rift, a new anomaly appeared. A swirling, luminous mass stretched across space like a living barrier. Instruments failed to record consistent readings, and even the ship's AI hesitated, offering cautious recommendations. Mara's pulse quickened. "This is different. Everyone double-check systems and life support. We proceed slowly, carefully. No sudden moves." The team moved as one, adjusting, recalibrating, and responding to the unpredictable. Hours passed as they navigated this new challenge. Every action required precision. Every decision carried weight. The ship reacted to their choices, amplifying or compensating as necessary. Mara realized that the vessel was not just testing their technical skills, it was testing their minds, their teamwork, and their ability to remain calm under relentless pressure. They were learning the ultimate lesson. Human courage and ingenuity were the true engines of survival, even when faced with the unknowable. By the time the luminous mass faded, the engineers were drained but triumphant. The silent rift had tested them beyond expectation, but they had survived, adapted, and learned. Mara allowed herself a moment of reflection. The rift was more than a challenge. It was a teacher, pushing them to their limits and forcing them to discover the strength within themselves. The ship had been a partner, responding to their actions, but it was their courage, skill, and determination that had carried them through. As they continued deeper into the uncharted space beyond the rift, Mara felt a quiet pride in her team. They had faced the impossible and proven that human ingenuity and courage could endure where machines alone could not. The journey was far from over, but they had learned that even in the darkest, most dangerous reaches of space, humanity's spirit remained strong, resilient, and unbroken. The ship glided forward, leaving the worst of the silent rift behind, yet the engineers remained vigilant. Their bodies ached from days of near-constant alertness, but their minds were sharper than ever. The rift had tested their courage, their skill, and their teamwork, and now the true measure of their journey was about to reveal itself. Mara Levin, seated in the captain's chair, felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The ship, their creation, hummed with energy around them, responsive to every input, every adjustment, every subtle command. It was more than a vessel. It was a partner, a living testament to humanity's ingenuity. Eli, still rubbing his sore hands from hours at the controls, glanced at the data feeds. "Dr. Levin, all systems are stable, but the AI, it's behaving differently. It's not just following commands anymore. It seems learning from us." Mara nodded, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. She had noticed subtle patterns in the AI's responses. When the engineers acted decisively and with calm, the ship seemed to anticipate their needs, adjusting systems before anomalies could cause issues. In a way, the vessel had become an extension of their minds, reflecting their abilities, instincts, and courage. Joran leaned back slightly, observing the instruments with his usual calm. "It's remarkable. The ship responded to our actions, but also to our fears. When we hesitated, it compensated. When we acted decisively, it flowed with us. It's a partnership unlike any we've ever known." His words resonated with Mara. Humanity had built machines capable of incredible feats, but it was human courage and creativity that truly made the difference. The AI, no matter how advanced, had relied on their judgment, intuition, and teamwork to navigate the impossible. As they continued, the final challenges of the silent rift seemed to recede, leaving a strangely calm expanse of deep space ahead. Stars glimmered faintly, distant suns casting pale light on the hull. Mara allowed herself a brief moment to look out the viewport. The universe stretched endlessly, vast and mysterious, yet alive with possibility. Every obstacle they had faced, the energy surges, the gravitational distortions, the illusions of the rift, had been conquered not by the ship alone, but by the human mind and spirit guiding it. Even so, the rift had one last test in store. The sensors detected a dense field of energy currents, unpredictable and irregular, like a living web of power stretching across space. The AI alerted them immediately, its calm voice measuring each surge. "Energy wave cluster approaching. Predicted trajectory unstable. Recommend full system adaptation." Mara's fingers hovered over the controls. This was it, the final trial before leaving the silent rift completely. She looked at her team. "Everyone, focus. We've done this before, and we can do it again. Trust your skills, trust each other, and trust the ship." The engineers sprang into action. Eli adjusted the power conduits, Joran reinforced the hull integrity, and the others monitored life support, shields, and navigation. The ship responded seamlessly, adapting to their actions, but the currents of energy shifted with every adjustment, testing their precision and judgment. For hours they worked tirelessly, anticipating each surge, recalibrating systems, and synchronizing with one another. It was a delicate dance between human ingenuity and machine adaptation, a partnership forged through necessity and trial. At one point, a sudden surge threw instruments into chaos. The cabin shuddered violently, warning lights flared, and alarms screamed. Mara gritted her teeth, pressing the stabilizer controls with steady hands. "Divert energy to hull reinforcement. Reroute power from non-essential systems," she commanded. Every engineer moved instinctively, responding with precision honed through days of high-pressure navigation. The ship groaned, then stabilized, the surge dissipating as if acknowledging their mastery. The team exhaled collectively, a shared relief filling the cabin, but they knew the work was not over. Hours melted into each other as the ship navigated the final regions of the rift. The energy currents became less aggressive, the gravitational anomalies softened, and the instruments gradually returned to normal readings. Mara allowed herself a rare smile. They had survived the ultimate test. The silent rift, a place that had destroyed countless probes and terrified generations of scientists, had challenged them to their limits, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. As the rift's darkness gave way to the familiar clarity of mapped space, the engineers began to take stock. Minor damage had been sustained, but nothing irreparable. Systems once thought unstable had been reinforced through adaptive problem-solving. Sensors had been recalibrated to unprecedented precision. The ship itself seemed different, more responsive, almost alive in a way that went beyond programming. Mara realized that this journey had changed them all: the engineers, the vessel, and even the AI. They had discovered the true partnership between human courage and technological brilliance. Eli leaned back, exhaustion evident in his posture. "I can't believe we made it. It feels unreal." Joran smiled. "It is real, Eli, and it is ours. We faced the impossible and proved that human ingenuity matters, even in the most unforgiving places." Mara felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity's spirit, embodied in her team and in the ship, had triumphed over uncertainty and danger. The rift had been a teacher, a trial, and a mirror reflecting both fear and resilience. And in that reflection, they had seen the best of themselves. The AI's voice broke the quiet. "All systems stable. Hull integrity optimal. Environmental parameters nominal." It was calm, measured, yet there was a subtle nuance to its tone, almost as if it were acknowledging their achievement. Mara studied the readouts, noting that the ship had adapted its internal systems to match human responses. The vessel had tested them, yes, but it had also learned from them, evolving alongside its crew. This was a moment of realization. The true strength of the mission lay not only in the technology they had built, but in their courage, creativity, and determination. As the team began to relax, Mara allowed herself a moment to reflect. The journey had been grueling, days without rest, constant threats, and challenges that pushed their minds and bodies to the limit. Yet through it all, they had relied on one another, combining knowledge, experience, and intuition to overcome each obstacle. They had learned that fear was not weakness, but a guide, a reminder that careful observation, calm thinking, and decisive action were essential. And in facing the unknown together, they had become more than a team. They had become a singular force of human resilience. The ship moved steadily through deep space, leaving the rift behind. Mara watched the stars stretch out endlessly, a canvas of possibility. She thought of the countless humans who had dreamed of this moment, who had imagined what lay beyond known space. Now, her team had not only dreamed, they had acted, explored, and triumphed. Humanity's spirit had been tested, and it had shone brighter than the distant suns scattered across the void. Eli broke the silence, his voice quiet but filled with awe. Do you think the ship will remember this?" Mara smiled faintly. "In a way, yes. It has adapted, learned from us. But the memory that matters most is ours. We've learned what it means to face the unknown and succeed. That knowledge is ours to carry forward." Joran nodded. "And that knowledge makes us stronger, not just for this mission, but for every challenge humanity will face in the future." As they continued their journey, the ship's AI remained calm, precise, and responsive. Mara realized that the vessel was no longer just a machine. It was a partner, a reflection of their ingenuity, courage, and teamwork. It had challenged them, adapted to them, and in the process, helped them discover the depth of human potential. The engineers, too, had grown, their confidence and trust in one another solidified through shared experience. Together, they were stronger than they had been at the mission's start, ready to face whatever mysteries lay ahead. The final hours of the journey through the rift passed without incident, and the darkness of the void gradually gave way to familiar readings, clear signals, and the gentle pull of mapped space. Mara allowed herself a deep breath, a rare moment of release after days of unrelenting tension. The silent rift, which had seemed insurmountable, had been navigated successfully. The team had proven that human courage, ingenuity, and collaboration could conquer even the most daunting challenges of the universe. When the first faint glimmer of a distant sun appeared on the sensors, the engineers allowed themselves to celebrate quietly, not with loud cheers or extravagant gestures, but with a shared smile, a nod of recognition, and a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and had emerged not only intact, but triumphant. The journey through the rift had tested them, and they had proven that humanity could rise to meet the impossible. As the ship moved steadily forward, Mara looked around at her team. Each engineer bore the marks of fatigue, yet their eyes reflected pride, confidence, and determination. They had become more than a crew. They were pioneers, explorers, and witnesses to what humanity could achieve. The silent rift had tested their fears, but it had also revealed the depth of their strength. They were humans, small in the vastness of space, yet capable of extraordinary deeds. The AI's voice spoke one final time, calm and measured. All systems operational. Human crew performance exceptional. Future trajectory optimal. Mara smiled, recognizing the subtle acknowledgement in its tone. The ship had tested them, challenged them, and in doing so, had grown alongside them. It had become more than a tool. It was a partner, a reflection of the courage and ingenuity that made humanity unique. As the distant sun grew brighter, casting light on the hull, Mara felt a profound sense of hope. Humanity's journey through the universe had only just begun, but they had learned something vital: courage. Creativity and teamwork could overcome even the most insurmountable challenges. The ship had tested their fears, and in the process, they had discovered their true strength. They had proven that no matter how vast the universe or how dangerous the unknown, human ingenuity would endure. And as the vessel continued onward, deeper into uncharted space, the engineers knew one thing with certainty: humanity's spirit was unbreakable, and wherever the universe dared to challenge them, they would rise to meet it.